show, and we're discussing matters to do with food loss and waste, and we are tying that to climate financing. Remember, climate change is one of the biggest, if not the biggest factor in regards to impacting food production, especially for sub-Saharan Africa, where majority of us rely on rain-fed agriculture. And when the weather patterns change, when we have too much rain, too many losses. When you have too little rain, again, there is not enough production. So we are actually being impacted the most. So will climate financing actually be channeled towards areas of prevention and reduction of food loss and waste in this country? That is our discussion today. And in studio, we have Barry Lajuang, Food Loss and Waste Associate at World Resources Institute, WRI. We also have Mbui Mbarire, CEO of RETRAC, a Retail Trade Association of Kenya. And we have Professor Jana Mbuko, Professor of Horticulture at the University of Nairobi. I was told if I don't put the definite article, it will become problematic here. But ladies, thank you very much for making time. Mbarire, we're talking about the retail ecosystem. And I know earlier on, you almost preempted in regards to interventions to reduce waste and loss within the retail value chain. Take us through some of these emerging interventions to reduce food loss and waste in the retail space.
Okay, I think I'll start with first responding to something you said earlier, not to take you back, but your example of food waste, food loss happening in Nyandarua, carrots, cabbages, etc., milk going to waste, and at precisely the same moment, we're looking for food aid for northern part of the country. And one question I have asked very often, and I ask it even to government officials, have we mapped our country in terms of food and food seasons? Because yes, we have a logistics problem, but I think it would help if we knew what grows where, when, so that you're able to then work around creating a linkage to whichever market needs that particular product. That is one. The second one would be, I think it was last week, there was a bit of a heated debate around KS 1758 and the law requiring farmers to do certain things. And within that statute, there is a requirement, an encouragement that we go back to having farmer groups. I hear that farmers don't like to hear the word cooperative anymore. So to go back into having farmer groups. And for me, farmer groups really are an answer. And anywhere where agriculture has been successful, it has been because of farmer groups. For me, it does two things. It creates capacity and it creates a permanent known market linkage. So if we all grow tomatoes in this area and we have one farmer group, we all take our tomato to that farmer group store or cooperative. Let's just use that word. Like
aggregation centers that are being...
Not really, not really. This is a farmer group. Let's use Githunguri, for example. Githunguri does fresher milk. All the farmers within that area know where to take the milk and they know what the price is. So that encourages you to be able to continue doing your production because you know where the market is. And it stabilizes the price and it creates opportunity for that cold storage to be set up, value addition to grow, because once we have all this milk, we are packaging some, but let's do butter with some, let's do cheese with some, let's do ghee. So the farmer doesn't have to worry about tomorrow and will I have a market, because when you don't have a farmer group, I do not know where my tomatoes will go tomorrow. So the broker, nowadays government calls them market agents, will come and tell me, today we're buying at 10 shillings. And tomorrow when we come back, it's 5 shillings. So because I do not know where to take them if I don't sell to you at 10 shillings, I'm at your mercy. But if we had the cooperative, I would know today tomatoes are 10, tomorrow they're 10, next week they'll still be 10, and I offload all of them there, get my money, and I'm able to continue farming. So to encourage the thought around reestablishing farmer groups and really the need to map our seasons.
Yes.
Back to retail.
Yes.
So we have various forms of waste that we've identified. There's the deli food, there's things like bread, and then we've moved further to looking at processed foods. So sometime last year we had a conversation with Public Health Ministry, and our ask was, can we create a system around food redistribution. And from that point, I depart from using the word waste, because no one wants to be fed waste. If I bring you and say this is waste from the supermarket, you'll be looking at me like, aye. So I call it food surplus out of the retail sector. So we are working on doing guidelines with the ministry that will allow, for example, at the end of the day, to do two things. One could be redirect that food to feeding programs. That could be schools, street families, etc. Or it could also be, as is done in other parts of the world, discounted food, where you know that if I go to the supermarket at 9 o'clock, all the meat will be at 50%, or the bread will be at 50%. So it encourages those who would otherwise not be able to buy it at a normal price to then buy it at a discounted price. I see in places like Canada and Australia, they have working programs with university students, especially supermarkets placed near near universities, where it can be eat for free, it can be a food for $1 a day or something. But it diverts that food from going to the dump into human consumption, which is what we're looking to do to reduce the waste.
Okay.
The other thing we're looking at, even still within that redistribution, is retail has arrangement with their suppliers that should food be 2 months to the expiry date, then it goes back to the supplier in some cases. What do we do with that food when it goes back to the supplier? Is it then made into dog food or, animal feed? But it was produced primarily for human consumption. So how can we work with our suppliers and the manufacturers to redirect that food, again, to discount stores? And if you check in some of the supermarkets, even locally, you'll see food that they label for immediate consumption because the shelf life is short. But that will require a lot of consumer engagement, because even now, when supermarkets have sales, people tend to think there's something wrong with that produce. Why is it cheaper than it normally is? So there are required to be a conversation with consumers to educate them around discounting. It has a short life of one week, so buy it and consume it immediately. It's not bad. That is one. Two, have a conversation also that would include KEBS, for example, in terms of identifying and educating consumers on what is the difference between best buy and expires buy. Because one is a safety issue and one is simply a quality issue. So best buy means you get best quality today, but you can still eat it tomorrow. And my example is usually if you buy bread has a shelf life, I think, of 3 days normally. If that bread is in your house a week down, as long as it's stored properly, you still eat it, you never throw it out. Yet you would not touch the same bread in a supermarket. So again, the education around that quality is the only thing that maybe goes down a notch to 10%, or goes down to say 90% and not 100. Okay. Whereas expiry means it's no longer good for human consumption, because then it's a safety issue. All so right. Again, education around that particular conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we've started you've touched a little bit on the consumer and the mind shift that we need to have. But, the interventions within reducing wastage in the dailies, for example, creating these programs and their policies that you're pushing towards that. Now, going back the value chain, I want to bring in Prof.
Before you ask the question, I just wanted to add to what Wamboya has said about retailer, that apart from the halving the price of food that would otherwise go to waste so that people can buy. I have, remember, we the consumer want perfect produce. When you go to buy in the supermarket, you want a very perfect carrot. And because you want a perfect carrot, when the suppliers go to buy from farmers, anything that is not perfect is left at the farm. Because you, the consumer, or the person that goes to purchase, whether it's in the supermarket or the market, you want a certain quality, okay? But you see, that twisted carrot is not any less nutritious. It's still nutritious. issues in the farm that made it to be what it is, yeah? So I think one of the things, of course, you'd want your perfect carrot, but I think for the retailers, they could actually still bring that carrot from the farm, but have price disaggregation, right?
Okay.
So that the not so straight carrot is half price, and the straight carrot is premium, you pay more. You'll be surprised how much the not so perfect carrots will fly off the shelf.
Wow.
Because it's a cost issue.
Yeah.
I mean, because the reason I want a perfect carrot is because I'm going to pay by kilo. So why should I pay for the twisted one, yet there's a straight one? But if you were to have that strategy that, you know, the not perfect produce is a lower price, they'll actually, so they won't be left at the farm.
Yes.
They'll still come to the market. And people, you're on a budget.
Okay.
That carrot is still the same carrot. It's just that you'll take a little bit more time to peel it because it's not straight, but it's still the carrot, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is something we should encourage also retailers to do.
Definitely.
That, because you'll reduce food loss at the farm level, and also because even when they bring the carrots to the supermarket and they mix them, the imperfect and the perfect, the retailers will sort out the imperfect ones. And then the imperfect ones will be left. When you go after a day sale, you find the one what is left there, they are the bad ones, which people selected against, and that is wastage. So I think that is another thing the retailers could probably do and help to minimize wastage at the retail, but also minimize what is left on the farm.
Definitely.
Because if it's not going to be bought, the suppliers won't take it from the farmer. So wanaachia wakulima hiyo mbaya.
Definitely. It's called ugly food.
Yeah.
We want beautiful meals.
Yeah.
But you know, after you've cut your carrots, there's no difference.
No different, actually.
Yeah, we need to have a change of mentality. I think I've read an article in the past. That is a whole ecosystem. I can't remember the country, but there's a whole brand that actually, I don't know whether it's called ugly foods.
Yes.
Yes, and them is like, our food is not, it's equally nutritious, it's just that it's not conventional.
Yes.
Yes, and they have a market for that, it's more affordable, so retailers have a role in that. But Prof, you're talking about interventions at the production level. Of course, I wanted to bring in, because legislation has been changing. There's been that Horticultural Crop Authority Act bill that is being pushed, and some of the concerns that she raised in terms of farmer mapping. Of course, there's been a lot of outrage in regards to trying to take over our ecosystem, horticultural. You know, multinationals are taking over our food systems and whatnot. But some of the propositions in terms of farmer organization is quite interesting to consider. But at the production level, especially for horticulture, minimizing the losses and the wastage, what do you think are the priority investment areas that we need to make?
Yeah, so actually we say that in all value chains, and let me speak for horticultural value chains, the drivers or the causes for losses are actually interrelated. So what you see, the loss that you see at the market, for example, when you see a mango rotting at the market, or it has a fruit fly, for example, or anthracnose for mango, it didn't start at the market. It started at the farm. So we talk about, I know extension has been a bit challenged in Kenya because of devolution, but we need to start with the farm, good production practices, so that you manage, you know, the quality. Because you say after harvest, you can only preserve the quality. You cannot add quality. So if the mango, the banana, whatever veg is of low quality because of pest and disease, which should be managed in the farm, or you know, whatever, or nutritional deficiency, you see that is something that, so we talk about capacity building or capacity strengthening, we like to say these days, farmers to actually do the good practices in the farm to ensure that the quality at harvest is right. Then we need to do, you know, we've been trained, this is stuff we already do, that training, building capacity of the growers on harvest practices, how to harvest at the right stage for the right market, yeah? So if you probably have harvest produce that is meant for export market, when is the right time to harvest? If it's meant for fresh market, when is the right time to harvest? If it's for processing, when is the right time to harvest? You see, that is actually, it's no investment apart from just building capacity and helping the farmers to understand what is expected. But also, like Wamboi said, these things happen best when farmers are organized in groups. So it's easier to go and, say, we want to train you. Like you said, the market requires a certain standard, like what you're talking about, our standard, the KS 1758, is actually a market standard for Kenya. But you can't train individuals. When they're organized in groups, you can train them on what is expected. But also in that organized group, they can remember, we talk about the wastage of the losses at the farm level. We're talking about investment in cold storage. It is hard for an individual farmer to invest in a cold room as an individual. But when they're organized in groups, remember our farmers are smallholder. So the volume or the quantity they produce does not even warrant them to invest in a cold room, right? But when they're organized in group, and this is a model we've tried to pilot, and we implemented a project supported by the Rockefeller Foundation called Yieldwise Initiative. So organizing the farmers in groups, they are able to aggregate their produce. Yeah, but also when they're in this group, they're also trained on the best practices for production. Then whatever they bring to a facility that is owned as a group is of a certain quality. Yeah, so that in fact when they're organized in group, in fact the group, I thought cooperatives were an advanced part of the groups, but whatever we want to call them, organizing farmers in groups is key. Is key for capacity building on production practices, but also for them to aggregate their produce, to ensure they meet quality standards that are required by the market. So it's easier to reach out to them. They can also access facilities like cold storage that is needed to aggregate the produce and link them to market. For example, if they are organized in groups, they aggregate their produce, then they can have off-takers. You can imagine if there's an exporter, he wants a certain tonnage of produce, and that is where they get exploited, because the exporters come to them and they dictate the price. But if they are organized, if all farmers were organized, then the farmers will not be price takers. They'll be able to negotiate because they have quality. They've been able to aggregate a quality that is required. So an exporter wants 5 tons, wants 5 tons, wants 5 tons, wants 5 tons. Connect to the group leader and tell them, I'm coming on Thursday. I want 5 tons of apple mango. And the group leader would talk to the farmers in the group and say, bring this quality. This is something we try to pilot. But again, like I said, if all farmers are not organized in groups, the traders will go for those who are not in groups, because they know these ones who are in groups have been empowered to negotiate. So it's something that we need to push, because groups is the way to go. Because with groups, there's a lot that we can achieve especially with the horticultural farmers.
Yeah, and even talking about financing, it becomes pretty easy when you're more organized, because with grouping now you're able to track your cash flows, and when you talk about banks being risk averse, with a proper cash flow, they can say, you guys are making money. We can lend you, you can build a cold storage facility and whatnot. But as we finish up, unfortunately, time is really running out.
Can I just chime in before you go?
Yes.
From that particular topic. You mentioned aggregation centers. And I think in Vision 2030, there was talk about setting up aggregation centers. And I think some have already been set up. And those should be open to all. The only thing I see, and I say this because I know Professor did try to set up one somewhere, but the uptake always has a challenge. So for me, the aggregation center is an opportune time again to create not a farmer group, but a center where all farmers can bring their produce. And then it probably would have to be infrastructure maybe done by the government, but the running to be done by private sector so that it is self-sustaining. So if I have my Sukuma Wiki that I didn't finish selling, there's a cold storage within that aggregation center that I pay X figure to store overnight, per kilo. It could be per kilo or per sack. And again, that eliminates the loss element or reduces the loss element, because my tomatoes will then be stored properly and ready for sale tomorrow. So
definitely.
The aggregation centers, I know, were a big thing in Vision 2030, and I think they would really help. It would also help give farmers better value. Again, using retail, for items that we don't sell in large quantities, we then use middlemen, aka market agents. If I knew there's an aggregation center, I would go there and buy, and then the farmer gets a better value because you're removing the middle person.
Yes, definitely. Makes a lot of sense, actually. I like that. You've mentioned, we can partner, the government builds, private sector runs, and, in Kenya right now with privately initiated proposals, and public. Yeah, I know, it's amazing. But as we close up with Beryl, I know this issue of climate financing, some of these interventions, and understanding that we hit briefly in less than a minute. Talk to us about how critical climate financing and it being channeled can help reduce food loss and waste.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to talk in a minute because I need to complete this.
Please, within a minute.
So we've talked about retailers, we've talked about smallholder farmers.
Yes.
There's also a role that large companies or SMEs actually do when it comes to food loss and waste. And as the World Resources Institute, we recently, last week actually, during the Climate Week, launched an initiative we are calling 10 by 20K by 30. The target of this is to bring on board companies that are in agro-processing. We call them farm gate facing because they source their raw materials from the farmers. And the intention is that they will leverage their capacity and their relationships to actually commit and help or support smallholder farmers to reduce their losses. What do we mean by this? For example, a potato processing company has specific requirements if they're in the French fries market, for example. And so when they source from the field, there are those that they will definitely reject because it doesn't meet the height or the width, right? Because of the machine specifications and what the market is actually asking for. And so what we are challenging them is more or less like, what can we do with whatever remains? I know the farmer still has to think through, and they resell in the local markets and they try to get rid of it. Some use it as seed, but there's still opportunity to actually use this, the smaller sizes. And so we are more pushing and asking them, can you diversify your produce? Of course, that requires investment, right? Some we are telling them, because this program is actually across 3 countries right now in Africa. We are in Rwanda, we are in Kenya, and we are in Ethiopia. And in Kenya, we already have 3 companies committing, one in Rwanda and 2 more under engagement, and then we also go to Ethiopia. But what we are seeing is like the one company in Rwanda loses almost half of its chilling just during transportation. So meaning they don't have like the appropriate cold storage facilities for transport. And chili is highly perishable. She'll tell you, by day 3, you're losing it. Strawberry is the same thing. So when you talk about climate finance, I know we are raising the issue of food loss and waste to become as significant as the other sectors have been, right? A lot has been pumped into energy because we thought coal was dirty. But also when you now look at food, they're saying we are emitting between 8 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. And in terms of being a country, I know this we've said so many times in different forums, is that food loss and waste at the global level is going to become like the third largest country emitter after America and China. So it's huge, right? So some of the investments where we need and where climate finance would actually go are into things like the infrastructure that Jenny is mentioning. So thinking through in terms of how do we work with companies or retailers or the different stakeholders within the various value chains to finance such kind of initiatives. Thinking about secondary processing, that's an investment, and that can actually come from the climate kind of financing. So there'll be, and then the farmers in terms of adaptation and mitigation methods, whether they take up irrigation or those kind of practices that would enable them to ensure that they're delivering quality, are areas where we definitely would leverage on climate finance.
Amazing. Ladies, wish we had 2 hours to discuss this, but our time is up. Unfortunately, I know, Prof, you're looking up, you're wondering, where did the time go? We are 3 of us, we are deep, we've been going deep, but I think it's a discussion that needs to be held more and more, not just this time when we're discussing, marking the International Day on Matters Food Loss and Waste, but it should be a staple in Kenyan household. The way we love politics, the way we're discussing. We should discuss food security and some of these challenges, but we really appreciate you guys. Berry Lejuang, Food Loss and Waste Associate at World Resources Institute. We also have Mbui Mbarire, CEO, Retail Trade Association of Kenya, RITRAC, and Professor Jenna Mbuko, Professor of Horticulture at the University of Nairobi. And that's where we put a full stop to the show today. Thank you very much for watching Fab Kenya. I'm Noki Kimboy. Till the next one, bye-bye. That was lovely.